You ever hit that point in life where you're just done? Like, really done? That was me last April. My name's Naomi Russell, 32 years old, and up until a few months ago, I was the one holding my entire family together with duct tape and blind optimism. I lived in a 2-story home in a sleepy suburb called Maple Glen, outside of Pittsburgh. It looked perfect on the outside manicured lawn, hanging flower baskets, all that HGTV nonsense. Inside, it was chaos wrapped in codependency. I worked as the senior finance manager at Hensley & Company, a regional firm that prides itself on integrity, trust, and excellence. I was the dependable one at work, the one who remembered everyone's birthdays, never missed a deadline, and brought baked goods on Fridays. I was also the one who made sure our family didn't drown in bills, not because anyone asked me to, but because no one else would. That morning, like every other, I was up before dawn. I made eggs, toast, coffee, the whole works. Mom came down first, looking half alive. Her name's Gloria, mid-60s, retired admin assistant who now spends her days judging morning shows and talking about how things were better in the 80s. She poured herself coffee like a zombie and muttered a barely there thanks. Business as usual. My younger brother Eli, still dead to the world upstairs. I glanced at the clock. 8:07. He's gonna be late again, I muttered. Let him sleep, Mom said, flipping through her tablet. He was out late again with those friends of his. Right, his friends. More like a crew of half-employed 20-somethings who think streaming video games is a career path. Eli was 26, worked part-time at a comic book store, and spent the rest of his time avoiding responsibility like it was a contagious disease. But of course, I couldn't say that out loud. That would be nagging. I sighed, wiped down the counter, and packed lunches. Habit. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss. Meeting moved to 9 a.m. Big client coming in. Be sharp. Perfect, I whispered to no one. I grabbed my bag and tossed a quick tell Eli there's food in the fridge over my shoulder. Hey, Mom said. Not even looking up. The dryer's making that weird noise again. Can you check it tonight? Sure. Why not add appliance repair to my unpaid resume? Just before heading out, I caught a glimpse of the kitchen calendar. April 12, a tiny red heart. I'd drawn weeks ago circled the date, my birthday, and no one had said a word. Work was the only place that felt normal. My desk was spotless. My team respected me. My friend Maya, who worked in the next office over, greeted me with a big smile and a cappuccino. Happy birthday, lady, I grinned. You remembered. Of course. You think I'd forget the one person keeping this place from going full circus? That hit harder than I expected. At least someone saw me. We wrapped the meeting by mid-afternoon, and for once, I wasn't drowning in spreadsheets. I shut down my computer, feeling something I hadn't felt in months, anticipation. Maybe, just maybe, my family had planned a little something. A cake? A card? Even a happy birthday would have been nice. I pulled into the driveway around 5:30. The sun starting to dip low behind the trees. The living room window glowed from the TV inside. I walked in with a smile. Hey, I'm home. From the couch, Mom grunted, eyes glued to her quiz show. You're early? Yeah, finished work ahead of schedule. No mention of the date, no surprise waiting in the kitchen, no smell of cake or candles, just the usual nothing. Where's Eli? I asked. Out shopping with his buddies. Said he'd be back later. Oh, can you make something quick for dinner? I've got book club tonight. Book club. She never skipped it. I felt this tightness in my chest, like the air had gone stale. Anything special today? I asked, forcing a casual tone. She blinked. Why? I stared at her for a second. No reason. She turned back to the TV. Back in the kitchen, I opened the fridge. I'd meal prepped over the weekend, just like always. Everything was neat, labeled, ready to go. That's when Eli barreled through the front door. Yo! Naomi, check this out. I scored this bomber jacket for half off. He dumped shopping bags onto the floor and grinned like a kid on Christmas. Oh, sweet, you're home. What's for dinner? I just stood there, hand on the fridge door. You want me to cook? I asked slowly. Yeah? Mom's out and I've got plans with Diego tonight. Movie starts at 8. Can we eat early? Something snapped. I'd paid for those groceries. Paid for the gas Eli used to hang out with his friends. Paid for the house, the internet, even Mom's streaming subscriptions. And they couldn't even remember my damn birthday? I'm not cooking, I said. Eli paused, confused. Wait, what? Why not? I walked out of the kitchen, grabbed my purse, and said without turning back, because I'm done. Done with what? He called after me. I didn't answer. I drove downtown and checked into a hotel. Just a random Holiday Inn. Nothing fancy. I didn't even pack a bag, I just needed space. I sat on the bed, kicked off my heels, and stared at the wall for a long time. The weight in my chest? It didn't lift, but it shifted. For the first time, it wasn't about guilt. It was about anger. And something sharper underneath. Freedom. That night, I did something I'd thought about for a year but never had the guts to do. I emailed Parkwood Financial Group, a company in Austin that had offered me a job 6 months ago. Higher pay. Better title. Relocation package. I'd declined back then. Told them family obligations. My message was simple. Is the offer still on the table? The next morning, I had my answer. Yes. Let's set up a call. Back at home, Eli and Mom were in full panic mode. Missed calls. Texts like, Naomi, where are you? This isn't funny. We need to talk. But I didn't reply. Not yet. They'd made it clear where I stood in their lives. It was time they saw what life was like without me holding it all together. I woke up in a quiet hotel room the next morning, sunlight sneaking in through a crack in the blackout curtains. No door slamming, no voices, no one asking me for anything. It was just still. I checked my phone. 9 missed calls from Eli, 5 from Mom, a couple of frantic texts. Where are you? What's going on? You need to come home, Naomi. This isn't okay. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before typing out a single reply. I'm safe. I just need some time. That was it. No explanations, no apologies. After a slow breakfast in the hotel cafe, I opened my laptop and pulled up the email from Parkwood Financial. The recruiter, Marcus, had responded faster than I expected. We'd love to talk. If you're available this week, let's schedule a Zoom. I didn't hesitate, booked the call for Thursday. For the rest of the day, I didn't do much. Just walked around downtown, took in the chilly spring breeze, and sat at a random park bench watching people pass by. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I did something that wasn't directly tied to someone else's needs. It was freeing and terrifying. Meanwhile, back at home, the cracks were starting to show. Eli was pacing around the kitchen, his phone glued to his hand. She left a note, basically, he said, scrolling through his messages. That's it? Mom sipped her coffee, her eyes a little wider than usual. Did she say when she's coming back? No. Mom's voice had an edge I hadn't heard in a long time. This is ridiculous. She can't just disappear. Eli shrugged. She kind of did, though. They both stood in that kitchen, the one I'd stocked, cleaned, and organized, completely unsure what to do now that I wasn't around to fix everything. They didn't even realize how much they'd come to rely on me, until I was gone. The next morning, I let my manager know I was taking a few personal days. Didn't go into detail. She was surprisingly understanding. By Wednesday, I had a clearer head. My resume was already up to date because, of course, it was Some Habits Die Hard, and I started prepping for the Thursday call. I reviewed the company, looked at the leadership team, ran through possible interview questions. It felt good having something to look forward to that was just mine. That night, I got a call from Maya. Hey, are you okay? You've been out of the office and people are starting to ask? I hesitated. Then I told her everything, my birthday, the silence, walking out, the job offer. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Naomi, good, I'm glad. I blinked. You are? Yeah, she said. You've been carrying your family for years. You've earned a life of your own. I don't know if they can handle it without me. Maybe they'll have to learn, she said softly. People figure things out when they're forced to. She was right. Because while I was interviewing with a company in Austin that saw my worth, my mom and brother were unraveling. That same night, Eli's debit card got declined while buying takeout. He thought it was a glitch. Turns out it wasn't. Why is my account so low? He muttered, logging into his banking app. He hadn't realized how much of the utilities I had quietly been paying off when he forgot to Venmo me. Mom, meanwhile, Got a red stamped envelope in the mail. Past due notice on the mortgage. Her hands shook as she opened it. This can't be right, she murmured. Naomi always. She didn't finish the sentence. Because it hit her. Naomi always did everything. On Thursday, I dialed into the Zoom call with Marcus from Parkwood Financial. He was warm, charismatic, and smart. The conversation was easy. Your qualifications speak for themselves, Naomi, he said with a smile. Frankly, I'm surprised someone hasn't snatched you up already. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I've just had. Things keeping me in place? I replied carefully. Well, he said, if you're ready to step forward, we're ready to have you. By the time we hung up, I had a tentative offer, more money, higher role, full relocation covered. I stared at the screen and whispered to myself, holy crap, this is real. That night, I got another text from Eli. Hey, can we talk? Please. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I needed him to feel the weight of my absence. Friday morning, Mom knocked on Eli's door. I just checked the bills, she said. Electric, water, internet, insurance. Naomi's name is on all of them. Eli looked up from his laptop, a rare seriousness on his face. I mean, I knew she did a lot, but she's been paying more than we thought. Way more. Eli stood, walked to the kitchen, and opened the fridge. Half empty. He pulled out a loaf of bread and stared at it like it might offer him advice. We don't even know how much the mortgage is, he said. Mom was silent. Then she muttered, I think we took her for granted. The final punch came Saturday afternoon. Eli's credit card got frozen due to non-payment. He hadn't paid the minimum because he assumed I'd taken care of it, like I always did. He came home livid. This is insane. I'm not even that behind. Mom just stood at the sink, her back turned. She wasn't just holding us together. She was the structure. We were just living in it. They both looked at the calendar that still hung in the kitchen. April 12, circled in red. Eli whispered. It was her birthday, and neither of them had said a damn word. I was sitting in the hotel lounge later that evening when Maya called again. You won't believe this, she said. Eli called the office. He sounded shaken. About what? He asked if you'd quit. Said they're worried you're never coming back. I paused. I haven't made it official yet, but you're going to, right? I took a deep breath. Yeah, I think I am. 3 days later, I got a video message. It was Mom and Eli, sitting awkwardly in the living room. Mom looked tired, not just physically, but like the years of denial were finally catching up with her. Eli looked nervous, fidgeting with his sleeves. Naomi, Mom started, voice shaky. We're sorry. For everything. For not seeing what you've done. What you always did. Eli followed. We didn't realize until you weren't here. And I know that's messed up. But it's the truth. They paused. We're trying, Mom said. I applied for a full-time receptionist job. And Eli's picking up extra hours. We'll figure it out. But if there's any part of you that's still open to talking just to talk, we'd like that. I watched it twice. Then I closed my laptop and stared out the window at the street below. They weren't begging. They weren't blaming. They were just finally facing reality. I didn't respond to the video right away. I needed time to sit with it, to really feel it. Not just the apology, but the way it felt to finally be seen. The truth? It broke something open in me. Not in a sad, ruinous way, but in that soft, terrifying way clarity often arrives. For so long, I was the glue, the safety net, the automatic yes. I'd let myself believe that keeping the peace meant keeping myself small. That being reliable meant being invisible. But now, I was finally wondering what life could look like if I stopped shrinking. Sunday morning, I walked down to the cafe on the corner, ordered a matcha latte, found a table by the window, and opened my laptop. There it was, Marcus's official offer letter from Parkwood Financial. Salary 60% higher than what I was making. Director-level title. A relocation package so generous, I almost didn't believe it was real. I reread every line. Then I hit reply. Thank you, Marcus. I'm honored to accept. Let's begin the paperwork. I sat back, letting the moment wash over me. A strange, unfamiliar warmth settled in my chest, relief maybe. Or peace. For once, I wasn't making a decision based on anyone else. It was just for me. Meanwhile, back home, the silence was louder than ever. Eli stood in the kitchen, staring at a spreadsheet on his laptop. He'd created it the night before, after realizing they had no idea how much they were spending every month. I used to joke that he thought Excel was finance sorcery. Now he was learning cell by cell how expensive reality could be. Mom came in, hair still wet from the shower, face pale and tight. "I called the gas company," she said. "We're officially on the payment plan." Eli sighed. "That's something." They both sat at the table, surrounded by bills, open notebooks, and unpaid envelopes. "She really left," Mom said, almost to herself. "Yeah," Eli replied. "And honestly, I don't blame her." Back at the hotel, I started making a list. Nothing dramatic. Just a note in my phone titled, "Next chapter. Cancel utilities I'm no longer responsible for. Book flight to Austin for apartment search. Give notice at work final day, 2 weeks from Monday. Close joint grocery account. Donate anything I don't want to bring. Send one last message to Mom and Eli." I didn't want to disappear. That was never the goal. But I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. On Wednesday afternoon, I dropped by my office to clean out my desk. I told HR I was resigning. My manager, Clara, looked genuinely stunned. "You're one of our best," she said, frowning. "Is this about money?" No, it's not about money," I interrupted gently. "It's time." She nodded slowly. "Well, we'll miss you." "I'll miss parts of it too," I said honestly. And I would. The parts where I felt competent, respected. Not the parts where I went home and immediately got handed a grocery list, 2 voicemails about the leaking dishwasher, and a passive-aggressive comment about not calling Eli's dentist. The night before my flight to Austin, I sent a final message to my family. "I'm moving. I've taken the job in Austin. I'll be starting over new city, new place, new chapter. I won't be coming back, but I'm not cutting you out. I just need space to build a life that's mine." "You'll be okay. I believe that now." Naomi, I didn't expect a response. This time, the silence felt okay. Austin was warm, alive, and full of noise. A strange contrast to the flat, cold quiet I'd grown used to. My hotel overlooked the city skyline. The first thing I did was find a little apartment in East Austin, small but bright, with hardwood floors, a balcony, and just enough room for one fully grown woman who was finally choosing herself. When I signed the lease, the property manager handed me the keys and said, "Welcome home." I cried in the car for 20 minutes, not because I was sad, because no one had ever said that to me and meant it. Meanwhile, back in Maple Glen, reality was still crashing in like a slow, unstoppable tide. Mom finally got a receptionist job at a dentist's office. The pay wasn't great, but it was full-time. Eli, after 4 rejections and 2 interviews where he forgot his resume, landed a job doing data entry at a logistics company. Not glamorous, not exciting, but stable. They started having budget nights every Thursday. A little notebook, receipts, trying to figure out what they could live without. "I miss her," Mom admitted once, staring into her chipped coffee mug. "I miss the way she just made it all work." "Yeah," Eli said, rubbing his eyes. But maybe it wasn't fair to expect her to. I was 2 weeks into my new job when I got a message from Maya. "You're glowing in that LinkedIn photo. I'm proud of you." I smiled. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living with myself, not just around other people. My team at Parkwood was sharp, direct. No one expected me to solve their home drama or fix their lives. I was respected on merit alone. Imagine that. The hardest part wasn't the move. It was learning how to be okay with peace. I wasn't used to it. I kept waiting for someone to call, to demand something, to guilt trip me back into my old self. But the phone stayed quiet. And slowly, the anxiety that used to sit on my chest like a weight started to loosen. Then one Friday, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, return address from Mom. I hesitated before opening it. Inside were 2 short letters, one from her, one from Eli. "Naomi, we're not asking for anything. Just wanted you to know we're standing on our own now. It's hard, but we're doing it. I've been cooking again badly, but still, I'm sorry it took losing you to see your value. That's on me. I miss you every day, but I'm proud of you. Love." Mom Eli's was scribbled in all caps, classic. Know me. I have an actual 401k now. No idea what I'm doing, but I figured that'd make you smile. Thanks for everything. You didn't just help us survive, you showed us we could do more. I'm sorry I was a lazy brat. You deserved better. We love you. For real this time, I read both letters twice, then tucked them into the drawer next to my bed. I wasn't ready to call yet. But maybe someday. One night, as I sat on my tiny balcony with a glass of wine and a blanket, I realized something important. Sometimes we think love means giving everything, being everything, carrying everyone. But maybe real love is teaching people how to carry themselves and loving yourself enough to let them try. A month passed. It was strange how quickly you could get used to peace once you stopped expecting it to be ripped away. I found routines again, morning runs by Lady Bird Lake, Friday night grocery runs to Trader Joe's, coffee on the balcony before the city stirred. No one needed anything from me. No one was waiting for me to solve the next crisis. And honestly, it felt like learning how to breathe again after years of shallow survival. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss them. Not the weight of them, but the familiarity, the shared memories, the small, dumb things like Eli quoting movie lines at the worst moments, or Mom's weird obsession with antique clocks. Still, I wasn't ready to go back, not even for a visit. One Saturday morning, I got a call from Maya. Hey, I just got off the phone with your mom. My heart skipped. Wait, she called you? Yeah, she said, her voice soft. She asked how you were doing. I didn't give her details, don't worry. But, Naomi, she sounded different. Different how? She wasn't demanding. She just asked if I thought you were happy. That landed heavier than I expected. Maybe she's learning, I muttered. Maybe you all are, Maya said. Growth hurts, even for the people watching it happen. Meanwhile, back in Maple Glen, my absence had morphed into routine. Eli now had a full-time job with health insurance. He still sucked at waking up early, but he was doing it. He'd even bought one of those personal finance books I used to beg him to read. And Mom? She'd gone from barely part-time hours to clocking in 5 days a week, dealing with cranky dental patients and awkward insurance forms. Their house, my old house, had changed too. It was quieter, colder, but not dead. It was finally breathing on its own. Then something unexpected happened. A letter arrived at my new place not from either of them, but from my Aunt Renee. She was my dad's sister, someone who used to send birthday cards until we all slowly lost touch after he passed. Her handwriting hadn't changed. Naomi, your mom told me you moved. She said it was hard, but necessary. I just want you to know I saw how much you did, even when they didn't. Your dad would have been proud of the way you stood up for yourself. Love, Aunt Renee. I sat there for a long time, just holding that letter. Some kind of validation I didn't even realize I needed hit me like a wave. Because for the first time since I left, it wasn't just me saying, I matter. Someone else saw it too. Work was going well. My team was sharp, collaborative, low on drama, just how I liked it. I was managing a project for a nonprofit client when I found myself pausing mid-meeting. Everyone was focused, respectful, letting me lead. No one interrupted. No one dismissed me. That feeling, being trusted without having to prove yourself over and over again, it was addictive. Later that night, I took a walk downtown. The air smelled like rain and barbecue. Neon signs lit up the sidewalk. For the first time, I looked around and thought, yeah, I belong here. Back in Pennsylvania, the shifts at home were becoming more visible. Eli had started cooking. Not well, but still. He made spaghetti with jarred sauce and texted me a photo that was hilariously out of focus. Look at me, domestic king. I didn't reply, but I smiled. I kept the photo. Mom, on the other hand, had started therapy. Voluntarily. She didn't tell me directly Maya passed it on, but still, I didn't expect that. I remembered how Mom used to flinch at the word feelings, like it was a trap door that dropped her into something she couldn't control. And now she was choosing to open that door on purpose? That said something. One Sunday evening, after cleaning out my closet, I found an old scarf gray with soft fraying at the ends. Mom gave it to me when I graduated college. I'd kept it, even through the move. I stared at it for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and texted her. Found that scarf you gave me. Still smells like home. No reply for a few hours. But then, I miss you every day. I'm learning how to do better. Short, honest, no emotional blackmail, no guilt trip, progress. At work, I was selected to lead a team expansion project. My boss pulled me aside and said, "You've got the backbone for this. You don't flinch under pressure." And I thought, if only you knew what built that backbone, because it wasn't just spreadsheets and office politics, it was unpaid utility bills. Birthday mornings where no one looked up from their phone. Cooking dinner while being called selfish for wanting silence. It was holding everything while being told I was too serious or too uptight. Turns out, that kind of emotional endurance transfers well into leadership. 3 months after I moved, I got another letter. It was from Mom again, but this time, it came with something folded inside a page from her old journal. I started writing again, thought you'd want to see this entry. She'd written about me, about my birthday, about the silence in the house since I left. She wrote, "I never imagined my daughter would leave." Not really. But maybe that's the problem. I didn't see her as a person with her own life, just as the glue. And glue cracks too. Eventually. I read that line 3 times. It wasn't just an apology. It was self-awareness. The kind that doesn't come easy. Then came the call. After all this time, it was Mom again. For real. I almost didn't answer, but my thumb tapped the green icon before I could second-guess it. "Hi," she said, voice small but steady. "Hey, I don't want to take up your time, you're not." A pause. "I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you, Naomi. The first mean that. And I'm sorry it took me losing you to see how much I leaned on you. How unfair that was." "I let that settle. I appreciate that," I said quietly. "I'm not mad anymore. I just needed to matter to myself first." "You do," she said. "Always did. I just forgot how to show it." We didn't talk long, but it wasn't about the length. It was about the tone, the honesty. For once, there was no need to convince her who I was. She already knew. That weekend, I booked a one-way ticket back home, just for a visit. A short one. I didn't tell them yet. I needed to see with my own eyes if what I was hearing was real. Not because I needed them to beg or perform, but because sometimes healing asks us to return not to stay, but to witness change from a place of strength. And this time, I'd be walking through that door as someone they couldn't lean on without permission. As someone who learned to stand tall alone first, and now, by choice. The day I flew home, I didn't tell anyone I was coming. It wasn't out of pettiness. I wasn't planning some dramatic reveal. I just needed the space to decide how I felt without anyone shaping it for me. Without guilt, without obligation. Just me, walking back into my old world on my own terms. It was late afternoon when I stepped off the plane in Pittsburgh. I hadn't been back in 3 months, but it felt like longer. I rented a car, something small and quiet, and drove through familiar streets that looked a little more faded than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing them clearly for the first time. Maple Glen hadn't changed, but I had. I parked down the street from the house. It looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I felt larger now, like my sense of self had finally outgrown the space that used to shrink me. The lawn was trimmed, the porch swept. Someone had replaced the mailbox. I stood there for a second, fingers brushing over my scarf. Then I walked up and rang the bell. A moment later, the door opened. Mom froze. Her hand clutched the frame, and for a second, she didn't speak. Then softly, like she was afraid I might vanish, Naomi, I gave a small smile. "Hi, Mom." Her eyes welled up immediately. She stepped aside. "Come in, please." I walked in. The air smelled like cinnamon. The lights were dim, and something about it felt both familiar and foreign, like slipping into an old coat that doesn't fit quite the same anymore. Eli came out of the kitchen holding a cup of tea and stopped cold when he saw me. "Whoa. What? Wait. You're here?" "Hi, Eli." He looked stunned for a second, then set the mug down with a nervous thud. "You're actually here." "I said I wasn't gone forever," I said, shrugging. He scratched the back of his neck. "Yeah, I just thought, I don't know what I thought." There was a weird silence, not tense, just unsure. Then he added, "Do you want something to drink?" I laughed a little. "I'd kill for a glass of water." "Coming right up, Your Highness." That broke the tension. We all chuckled. Even Mom smiled, wiping at the corner of her eye. We sat down at the table, Mom, Eli, and me. I could see they'd cleaned the place. It wasn't spotless, but there was a quiet effort in every corner. The budget binder sat on the counter. A new grocery list on the fridge, color-coded. They were trying. And for the first time, I believed it wasn't performative. It wasn't a show for me. It was their new normal. Mom made lasagna her version of fancy. It was a little overcooked, but I ate every bite. They didn't ask questions about my job or if I was moving back. They didn't flood me with explanations or excuses. Instead, we talked about small things. How Eli accidentally shrunk all his sweaters last week. How Mom started watching documentaries and now insists she's an expert on Egyptian history. How they've been splitting bills, cooking in batches, using coupons. It was weird, but in a good way. I didn't feel needed. I felt welcome. There's a difference. After dinner, Mom and I sat on the porch with tea while Eli cleaned up. That alone was a sign of the apocalypse. She was quiet for a while, looking up at the trees swaying in the dark. "I didn't think you'd ever come back," she said finally. I wasn't sure I would either. She nodded slowly, sipping her tea. "You know, I used to think I was protecting you by asking you to stay. That maybe keeping you close was a kind of love." "It wasn't," I said gently. "It was a kind of fear." Her eyes met mine, and she didn't argue. She didn't deflect. She just nodded. "I know." The wind moved through the trees, soft and steady. "I didn't see you clearly before," she whispered. "But I do now." I didn't need an apology wrapped in flowers. That was enough. Later that night, I stayed in my old room. They hadn't changed it much. Some dust here and there, a different comforter, but most of it was intact photos on the shelves. The small lamp I always loved, the poster from a college play I barely remembered doing. I sat on the bed and looked around, feeling this strange mixture of nostalgia and detachment. It used to be my world. Now it was just a room, and that wasn't sad. It was peaceful, because I wasn't that version of Naomi anymore. The next morning, I made breakfast. Old habits, I guess. But this time, they didn't just sit and eat. Eli got up and flipped the toast. Mom set the table. They moved around the kitchen with me, not behind me, not waiting. Together. When we sat down to eat, Mom said, "After you left, I realized I'd never asked what you wanted. What you dreamed of. I never even asked if you were happy." I took a bite of toast before answering. I didn't know how to answer that back then, but I do now. She waited. "I want to live a life where I don't have to explain why my time matters, where I don't have to beg to be seen." "And now?" she asked. I smiled. "I'm getting there." After breakfast, I packed my things. My return flight was that afternoon. It wasn't a long visit, and that was intentional. I didn't come back to stay. I came back to see. And what I saw? It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Mom gave me a hug at the door. Tight, quiet, no guilt in it, just presence. Eli pulled me into a quick, awkward side hug. "I'm still bad at this feeling stuff," he muttered. "You're doing fine." "I've got a savings account now, by the way," he said proudly. Even labeled it emergency pizza at first. "But I'm taking it seriously," I laughed. "Proud of you, E." He looked down, then added, "You don't owe us anything, Naomi. You never did. We're just glad you're okay." I got in the car with a soft heart. Because for the first time, they weren't asking me to stay. They were just happy I came. Back in Austin, my apartment felt even more like home. I dropped my bag by the door, took off my shoes, and sat on the couch, staring out at the skyline. The wind was picking up again. I could hear leaves brushing against the windows. Everything in motion. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no urgent messages, just a text from Maya. "How did it go?" I replied. "Good. They're growing." "And so am I." Then I put the phone down and just sat for a while, letting the quiet hold me. Because peace isn't just the absence of chaos. It's the presence of self. 2 weeks after my visit, a small brown package showed up at my door in Austin. There was no return address, but I knew immediately who it was from. The handwriting on the label gave it away, Mom's neat slanted print, the same from all my school field trip forms. Inside was a hardcover journal. The first page had a note written in blue ink for your new beginnings. This time, only write what's for you. No long apology, no emotional appeal. Just that. I sat on the couch, journal in my lap, hands still, and I let myself feel the full weight of that small gesture. It wasn't just a gift, it was permission, and maybe more than that, it was a kind of release. Life in Austin moved on. I fell into a rhythm. Mornings at the gym, walking to work with iced coffee, evenings at a small bookstore. I loved that, smelled like cedar and old poetry. At Parkwood, my role expanded. I was asked to lead a team-wide initiative on financial literacy for low-income families. The kind of project I would have dreamed about back in Pennsylvania, but never had time to pursue. Funny how when your energy isn't being bled out in 100 directions, it becomes something powerful, directed, intentional. I was finally becoming someone I barely recognized, but in the best possible way. Eli texted me photos now and then. One was of a lasagna he made charred at the corners, but proudly captioned Naomi style. Another was a snapshot of his first raise letter. He blurred out the numbers but underlined well earned. He even asked me for budgeting help without assuming I'd fix things for him. I sent him a spreadsheet template and joked that he should name his emergency fund something more grown up than Pizza Fund 2.0. He wrote back, already renamed. It's level up money now, progress. Mom and I talked once a week. No pressure, no manipulation, just a quiet rhythm that unfolded naturally. She'd share something she was working on, learning how to use budgeting apps, growing basil on the windowsill, journaling regularly. I'd tell her about work, a new cafe I tried, or how I was thinking about getting a cat. We didn't rehash the past. We didn't need to. It was all said, and more importantly, heard. The foundation now wasn't guilt or obligation. It was mutual respect, a rare thing to rebuild, but worth every brick. On my next birthday, I didn't expect much. That morning, I made coffee, opened the balcony door, and sat watching the sun rise over the city. The sky was that soft orange pink that never stays long. Then my phone buzzed. First, a video message from Eli. He was holding a birthday cake store-bought, clearly, and slightly crooked but grinning ear to ear. Happy birthday, big sis. Hope you're living it up. I'll be eating this cake on your behalf. 1 slice for you, 3 for me. You know the drill. Next was a voicemail from Mom. She sang the birthday song off-key and way too slow but didn't stop halfway, like she used to. She finished the whole thing. Then she added, I'm proud of the woman you've become. I hope you're proud of her too. I was. More than she knew. That night I had dinner with friends. People I'd met through work, through the bookstore, through sheer happenstance. We drank wine, passed plates around, told stories that had nothing to do with old wounds or survival. Someone raised a glass and said, to Naomi, who reminds us what it means to choose yourself. And I felt this soft warmth in my chest, not attention, not praise, just being seen, fully, finally, for who I was now, not who I'd been forced to be. A week later, I used the journal, not for anything deep, just a list. Things I've learned, being needed isn't the same as being loved. People grow, but not always when we want them to. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. Silence can be healing. Sometimes distance builds better bridges than closeness ever could. I am not the glue anymore, and that's okay. I closed the journal, placed it on the shelf, and sat with the quiet. By spring, I'd adopted a cat. Her name was Clementine, and she acted like she owned the place, which was fair. She'd curl up on my laptop during Zoom meetings and knock pens off the table with the kind of petty flair I couldn't help but respect. One afternoon while working from home, I glanced around my apartment. It wasn't fancy, just cozy, honest, mine. There were photos, now ones I'd chosen, books I actually wanted to read, plants that were still alive, and a calmness I couldn't have imagined a year ago. It was nothing like the life I used to have, and that's what made it perfect. Sometimes I'd think about the night I walked out, how quiet the door sounded when I closed it, how scared I was, how tired. But looking back, I wasn't walking away. I was walking toward something I hadn't named yet, toward air I could breathe, toward a life where I mattered to myself. And somehow, in doing that, I gave everyone else room to grow too. One last thing. A few months later, I went back to Pennsylvania for a wedding. It wasn't a dramatic trip, just a weekend. Quick in and out. But I saw them, Mom and Eli. We had coffee, talked about nothing and everything. No tension, no unspoken debts. As I was leaving, Mom hugged me and whispered, "You coming back next year for your birthday?" I paused, then smiled. "Maybe, or maybe you'll come to me this time." She nodded. "Either way, we'll be there, no matter where you are." Eli grinned. "Just don't make me eat vegan cake again." "No promises," I laughed. We said our goodbyes. No tears, just love. Back in Austin, I stood on my balcony, watching the city breathe. I wasn't holding anyone up anymore. I wasn't chasing approval. I was living. Fully. Freely. Finally. And that was the kind of ending that didn't need applause. Just silence, stars, and a woman who'd come home to herself. Story 2. Orange-tinted leaves danced to the ground on a Boston autumn afternoon. Elizabeth Miller looked out the window of the library. She had spent 15 years as a librarian at this neighborhood library, settling into the peaceful world of books. Her long brown hair was pulled back. Her expression was one of compassion and intellect. "Elizabeth, has the new history section been fully organized?" Susan, her coworker, inquired gently. "Nearing completion. I'll complete it in the morning," Elizabeth grinned back. George and Martha, Elizabeth's parents, had a modest real estate business in the Boston suburbs. In the local real estate market, George was a well-known personality. Martha was an outgoing woman who often made appearances at charitable activities in her community. They always boasted about their younger daughter, Vanessa, out of their 2 kids. Vanessa was the manager of a high-end store on Newberry Street. With a look straight out of a fashion magazine and her social connections, she exuded glamour, sociability, and ambition. Her folks were always praising her. "You haven't forgotten about tonight's meal, have you, Elizabeth?" When Martha called, Elizabeth held her breath. "We had a family meal tonight." "Yes, Mommy, I do recall. At 7, I'll be there." "Vanessa has some amazing news to share. That girl is really bright." There was pride in Martha's voice. "Are you involved in any recent activities?" "Nothing noteworthy." Elizabeth gave a muted response. She did, in fact, have some important news. However, it wasn't yet appropriate to disclose it. As usual, Vanessa was the center of attention during the Miller family dinner. She went on to discuss her success stories at the boutique and the most recent rumors circulating in Boston's elite circles. Her every phrase caused her parents to gasp in awe. Her words seemed to be bewitched. "Let me share my news now." Before serving her cheesecake dessert, Vanessa pondered thoughtfully. "David Collins and I have begun dating." Maritas Pharmaceuticals' David Collins. George's eyes became wide with shock. "He is the director of sales, yes. He brought me to an opulent restaurant yesterday." With victory, Vanessa exclaimed, "That's fantastic! Doesn't his father belong to the golf club?" After supper, Martha was thrilled as Elizabeth was washing the dishes. Martha came over to her. "You must locate a good person, Elizabeth. Soon." "You're 36 already. There is not much time left," Mother Elizabeth interrupted her. She then plucked herself the guts to say, "Actually, I'm engaged." Martha's dishwashing hand stopped. "What?" "To whom?" "Harrison Michael. At the library, I met him." Martha's face took on a look of complexity. "When can we meet him then?" "After 2 weeks." Michael was taken to her parents' home by Elizabeth. Michael Harrison had a towering stature and a bright son. He gave her parents a humble greeting and courteously responded to their inquiries. But it's obvious that her parents weren't impressed by his plain suit and modest demeanor. "What do you do for a living then, Mr. Harrison?" George inquired. "I am employed at a publishing business as an editor." Michael gave a muted response. Following supper, Vanessa drew Elizabeth away. "Isn't Michael a little boring? Can he truly bring you joy?" Elizabeth grinned. "We adore one another. That's what counts. That's the best you can do, I guess, given your age." Vanessa gave a shrug. The announcement that Vanessa was engaged to David Collins came 6 months later. Her parents were ecstatic and hosted a lavish engagement celebration at a 5-star hotel. Vanessa's glamorous announcement overshadowed Elizabeth and Michael's engagement. "Why doesn't Michael participate more in the wedding planning, Elizabeth?" one day Martha inquired. Every weekend, David and Vanessa visit potential places. He's occupied, Elizabeth replied. In actuality, Michael was not really excited about getting ready for the wedding, frequently pointing to his job obligations. But Michael was like a different person when they were by themselves. He was kind, considerate, and slowly revealing his actual personality to Elizabeth. He used to say, "Believe me, everything will be all right." Elizabeth took him seriously. She was getting ready for a small but meaningful wedding. No matter how her family responds, she was committed to her chosen course. Elizabeth went to a modest church in the Boston suburbs 2 weeks prior to the wedding. In the early light, the white church was glowing serenely. Although it wasn't a particularly elegant location, Elizabeth and Michael found a special spot there. Here, they verified their emotions for one another and had their first meaningful chat. "Miller, miss, this is the day's final schedule." She was given certain paperwork from the church coordinator. Flowers and music. Everything has been verified. Elizabeth looked over the papers with a smile. Despite being tiny, the wedding was well organized. The cake was being prepared by a former pastry chef who volunteered at the elderly home, and the floral arrangements were particularly arranged from a nearby florist. "Thank you." When Elizabeth's phone rang in her bag, she said to the coordinator, "It's perfect." She noticed from the screen that it was Vanessa's call. "Hi, Elizabeth. Now come home. I have some significant news." Vanessa's voice was excited as usual. "I'm at the location to make one last check. I'll be back later." "No. Now. Parents are waiting for two." Elizabeth let out a long sigh. Vanessa always put her convenience first. "Okay. In an hour, I'll be there." Vanessa was waiting in the living room with her parents when she got to their house. On the table, glasses of pricey champagne had been opened and filled. Vanessa's expression was one of scheming and evident joy. "What's new?" When Elizabeth asked, Vanessa got up and took David's arm. Vanessa said excitedly, "We've decided on a date for our wedding. Thanks to David's father's connections, we have a reservation at the magnificent Grand Hotel. We were granted special permission, despite a waiting list being in place." "That's fantastic," said Elizabeth. "What time is it?" Vanessa smiled. "May 15. Elizabeth's body froze at 2:00 p.m. May 15 at 2:00 p.m. Her wedding to Michael took place on the same day and at the same time. But my wedding is on that day. The invitations have already been sent out, silently, Elizabeth said. Vanessa shrugged, seemingly innocently, "I know. However, this is a unique chance. The Grand Hotel. It is insignificant in comparison to your tiny church." George cleared his throat as Elizabeth struggled to speak. "You ought to reschedule your ceremony, Elizabeth. Since you're the older sister, you ought to yield." "But I've already sent out invitations and made all the reservations, Dad." Elizabeth shook her voice. "In any case, your wedding won't be particularly noteworthy," George said icily. "Vanessa's wedding will be attended by key executives from David's business. It's a big opportunity for our real estate business." Martha also set her glass on the table. "Elizabeth, please understand. Vanessa's wedding will be a major event in society. You and Michael. Well, something more modest suits you better." Anger welled up in Elizabeth's heart, but she didn't show it on her face as she remained silent. Vanessa added even more pressure. "Your shabby dress, your cheap venue. It would be better for everyone if you canceled," she said condescendingly. "Come on. Michael is just a regular employee at a publishing house, right? David is an executive at a big pharmaceutical firm. The future prospects are different." "Yes, and David's parents are such decent people," Martha chimed in. "His father is even the president of the golf club. Many visitors will attend. Your tiny ceremony should give way to theirs." Elizabeth calmly gazed at her parents and Vanessa. Her heart was full with rage and despair, but she didn't show it. This was her family, a family that constantly emphasized Vanessa above her and belittled her sentiments and efforts. "I understand," was all she replied as she stood up. "Really? Elizabeth is so understanding after all," Vanessa rejoiced. "Wouldn't you give us a call to cancel immediately?" Without responding, Elizabeth picked up her luggage and slipped out of the home. She shut the front door behind her. She heard her mother's remarks and Vanessa's victorious laughing. "My astute daughter." Elizabeth's phone rang after she got into her car. It came from Michael. "How was it?" Elizabeth felt comforted by his soft tones. Bad. Elizabeth gave a brief explanation of the circumstances. Michael said, "Come home. Let's have a conversation." Michael lived in a small but tidy apartment. While making Elizabeth tea, he listened to her narrative in silence. "Vanessa wants to tie the knot on the same day as me. I should give way, my folks are telling me." Elizabeth's voice was stuttering. Michael grasped her hand. "What are you looking for? Really? I want the wedding to go according to plan." Elizabeth didn't hesitate to respond. "I don't want their self-centeredness to mar our wonderful day." A faint smile spread across Michael's lips. "Then we will do it. The wedding will go according to plan. However, my family," Michael whispered softly, "it doesn't matter if your family doesn't come. We have prominent individuals of our own." Elizabeth's eyes met Michael's. Love and faith were steadfast. She inhaled deeply before making her choice. "Let's do it the way we planned," she said. Michael gave her a tender hug. "Do not be concerned. Everything will be all right." In his arms, Elizabeth gave a nod. Her family had advised her to give up her life, but she had no intention of doing so. It was a clear morning in Boston on the wedding day. In the bridal parlor of the tiny chapel, Elizabeth was getting ready for the wedding. Rebecca, Michael's cousin, was assisting with the finishing touches to her hairdo. "Elizabeth, you are so lovely." Rebecca touched her shoulder with her hand. "Michael is really fortunate." Elizabeth grinned, although she was experiencing conflicting emotions. Her parents had persuaded her to put off the wedding, therefore there had been no communication from them. Despite her repeated calls, she had received unresponsive answers. Vanessa, too, had stopped communicating. Rebecca remarked softly, "It's sad that your family isn't coming, but the presence of you and your pals makes me very pleased." Elizabeth gave an honest response. "Having folks who truly bless the start of my new life is what counts." She could see automobiles starting to pull into the church parking lot outside the window. One by one, Elizabeth was a little taken aback. It was intended to be a simple wedding for her and Michael. Only close friends, coworkers, and Michael's whole family had been invited. Not even 50 individuals should have been present. Elizabeth said that there appeared to be a good number of people, and Rebecca went up to the window. "Those are fancy automobiles, aren't they?" "Oh," said Rebecca, "in the parking lot of the church." There were Mercedes, BMW, and even a few Rolls-Royces parked in line. One by one, men in suits were leaving and making their way to the chapel. "What's going on?" Elizabeth was perplexed. "Isn't this my wedding?" Just then, Michael's best friend Jason popped his head in the door after hearing a knock. "The guest list has become a little longer, Elizabeth." He smiled as he spoke. "A couple of extra guests," Michael said. Elizabeth's gaze grew wide. "Who are they?" "Business executives in Boston and the individual exiting the black limousine. That may be the governor, I believe." Jason gave a shrug. "The governor?" Elizabeth's voice lifted. "Who is Michael?" At that moment, Michael sent a brief message. "Do not be concerned. Everything will be all right." Bewildered by this peculiar circumstance, Elizabeth proceeded with her wedding preparations, saying, "I love you." Her delicate beauty was accentuated by her elegant, yet simple wedding gown. As the ceremony start time drew near, the pearl necklace Michael's mother had given her glowed softly around her neck. Elizabeth was also finishing up her preparations. Abruptly, the door flew open. Vanessa, who had been crying, and her parents were standing there, looking upset. "Elizabeth!" Martha came running to her. "What prevented you from calling off the ceremony?" Elizabeth gave her mother a composed glance. "I promised that everything would go according to plan." But George started with Vanessa's ceremony. "I don't give a damn." Vanessa cut me off. Her makeup was smudged, and her eyes were swollen and red. "Act quickly. All of David's family members, including his parents, are upset." Elizabeth was perplexed. "What are you saying?" Just then, the door opened once more, and Michael stepped inside. Elizabeth was a little taken aback. Seeing the bride before the wedding was considered unlucky for the husband. But she gasped when she saw Michael. He looked like he had walked out of a magazine since he was wearing a really expensive, fitted tuxedo. "Michael, what's going on?" Michael grasped Elizabeth's hand as she asked. "The wedding location for Vanessa and David appears to have been abruptly canceled." Calmly, Michael said, "It appears that all of David's family members have assembled, but they need a location." Why? When Elizabeth inquired, Vanessa stammered out her response. With a hint of fatigue in her voice, Martha said, "Well, they hadn't actually made a reservation." Elizabeth was too stunned to say anything since Vanessa and David assumed you would call off your nuptials. This was how the scheme to spoil her particular day had come back to haunt them. "Please, Elizabeth," George begged. "Give the venue to Vanessa. All of David's family members are significant individuals. His dad is upset. We can't make them seem bad." Martha noted that the company's future is on the line. Our real estate business will fail if we leave those individuals with a negative image. Elizabeth turned to face her parents, who had consistently put Vanessa first and disregarded her emotions. Now they had to deal with the fallout from their deeds. "Elizabeth, please," Vanessa sobbed as she said. "Assist me. David is upset. He is announcing that he will end the engagement." Elizabeth inhaled deeply. She felt despair and anger, but she repressed feelings. "I was advised to call off my ceremony by you." Although she spoke softly, her tone was determined. "However, I made the decision to live my own life. The ceremony is going to start, I'm afraid." But Michael moved nearer as Martha started to beg Elizabeth. Michael firmly stated, "Today is our special day. We would be delighted to have you as guests at your daughter's wedding, Miss S. Miller and Mr. Miller. But we cannot permit any disruption to this occasion." Michael's voice had a nobility Elizabeth had never heard before. Both of her parents were shocked, and Vanessa started crying. "I despise you!" Vanessa yelled. "My life has been wrecked by you." "It's our special day," Michael remarked, putting his hand on Elizabeth's shoulder. "Let's start leading her to the ceremony as scheduled." Just then, there were loud sounds coming from outside the church. Through the glass, they could see a middle-aged guy who had exited a fancy sedan yelling at a young man who looked like David. Clearly, that was David's dad. "What's happening? No location. What do you think about my pals?" David was shaking when he apologized. "Dad, relax. We are searching for a different location. Keep me from laughing. How are you going to get rid of this shame?" Elizabeth turned to Michael and stepped back from the window. She had never seen the resolve in his eyes before. "Michael, what's going on?" Michael gave Elizabeth a soft grin when she inquired, "I can tell you one thing, but there isn't enough time to explain everything." He took a strong hold of her hand. "I'll keep you safe. And everything will be made public today." Despite her confusion, Elizabeth had complete faith in Michael. She straightened her bridal veil and nodded. "Come on," she said. "Let's get our wedding started." As the grand wedding march played on the church organ, Michael unlocked the door and ushered her into the corridor. With her hand on Michael's arm, Elizabeth prepared to go on her new life. Vanessa and her parents were stunned. "Dad, Mom," Elizabeth pivoted. "Sit down. I'm getting married today." Elizabeth stood next to Michael as the church reverberated with the pastor's serious voice. Sunlight gently highlighted her bridal gown as it streamed through the cathedral window. At the rear of the chapel, she smiled at Michael after feeling his focus on her, despite her slightly uneasy demeanor. David's father was flushed and furious. Disgruntled relatives crowded about him, grumbling grumbles to one another. Pale-faced, David was making an unsuccessful attempt to placate them. "What a catastrophe! I didn't even want to go to his fiancée's sister's wedding," David's dad yelled. "What were you contemplating?" "Don't be so loud, Dad," David begged frantically. "Another location somehow." "Quiet," David's father interrupted him. "Today will never be forgotten. This has to do with Marita's Pharmaceuticals' reputation." Following a somber ceremony in which Elizabeth and Michael exchanged rings and swore their love for one another, the pastor announced, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." The assembly exploded in applause. Elizabeth had a joyful expression on her face as she gazed at Michael. Her cheeks were wet with tears. The reception was supposed to take place in a tiny hall next to the church, but Elizabeth was shocked to see how completely the space had been changed. Originally intended to be a modest space, the hall was transformed into a banquet room at an upscale hotel with the help of delicate candlelight and exquisite white flowers. Elizabeth was speechless, so Michael gave her a gentle squeeze on the hand. "I changed a few of things." He grinned. "I wanted it to be a location that you would be proud of." It was time for the toast as the event got underway. Michael got to his feet and picked up his glass. There was silence in the room. "Thank you all for coming together on this special day," Michael stated calmly. "Elizabeth, the best thing that ever happened to me was meeting you. I sincerely appreciate your brilliance, compassion, and most importantly, your unwavering genuineness." Elizabeth gave Michael a kind glance. "I also want to show you who I really am now," Michael went on. A faint whisper swept over the room. Elizabeth cocked her head, too. Elizabeth was presented to me as an editor at a publishing business, but Michael actually stopped. "I will be Edwards International's future president." The enthusiasm in the room was palpable. One of the biggest conglomerate companies in North America was Edwards International. It was said to have billions of dollars in assets. David's face became white. Edwards International's medical branch was Merida's Pharmaceuticals' biggest customer. "I wanted to develop real relationships," Michael added in a low voice. "I was looking for someone who would love me for who I am, not because of my riches or status." Elizabeth was also such a lovely lady. The size of Elizabeth's tears rose. Although she had questioned why Michael occasionally lacked clarity about his profession, she had never thought of such a secret. In an attempt to congratulate Michael, David's father rushed over. "Congratulations on your marriage, Mr. Edwards, Pharmaceuticals Almereda." Michael quietly stopped him with a raised hand. "I apologize, Mr. Collins, but I have one more item to tell you today." The room grew quiet once more. Elizabeth gave Michael a glance. She had never seen such sternness in his face. "It has to do with how my wife, Elizabeth, is treated." Despite being low, Michael's voice was full with fury. "I ordered an inquiry." It turned out that Vanessa Miller and David Collins hadn't truly rented a location, but had purposefully scheduled their wedding for the same day as Elizabeth's in order to ruin her ceremony. Michael pulled a sheet of paper out. "This is a copy of the emails that David and Vanessa exchanged. Elizabeth will undoubtedly give. She does it every time. We don't have to reserve a location. In any case, nobody is interested in her ceremony." The location froze. Every member of David's family was staring accusingly at Vanessa. Vanessa's head was drooping and she was flushed. "I will need to reevaluate my company strategy in light of those who attempted to spoil my wife's special day." There was a clear caution in Michael's statements. David's dad was enraged. "What have you done, David? I will not permit you to wed a woman like her." David stammered his words, "Dad, David whispered to Vanessa. "This isn't what I heard." "Elizabeth would undoubtedly call off the event," you remarked. He started taking off his engagement ring. Vanessa started crying. "Please, David." Elizabeth rose slowly in the quiet room. She had a determined and sorrowful look. "We are blessed today," she added softly. "Let's move forward from the past." She gave Vanessa a glance. Her sister was unable to look Elizabeth in the eyes because her face was flushed with tears and embarrassment. "Vanessa, I have no ill will against you." "Oh," Elizabeth said, "I'm just depressed." "We're sisters." "But why did this happen?" George and Martha hung their heads in embarrassment. They had regret on their faces. Elizabeth, the first to apologize. Martha's voice was shaking as she spoke. "We were mistaken." Vanessa, who could take it no more, fled the location. When David attempted to follow her, his father's arm caught him and restrained him. With a soft grin, Michael grasped Elizabeth's hand. "You really are an amazing person. One of the reasons I adore you is because of this." Elizabeth looked into her husband's eyes and nodded slightly. Her heart was filled with complex emotions, but she felt that this day was the beginning of her new life. The reception continued and the tense atmosphere gradually eased. Elizabeth and Michael chatted with friends, danced their first dance, and cut the cake. Seeing their happy figures, no one doubted that this marriage was based on true love. As the night deepened, Elizabeth occasionally looked toward her parents. They sat in a corner seat, talking quietly. Their expressions showed obvious regret. Elizabeth leaned against Michael and whispered, "Do you think I can reconcile with them someday?" Michael squeezed her hand and replied, "Time will heal. What's important is that you chose your own path and that we walked together." Elizabeth smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. Her heart felt truly free for the first time. She had gained the freedom to live her own life, no longer bound by her family's expectations or comparisons. 3 months later, Elizabeth and Michael had returned from their honeymoon in France and Italy and were beginning life in their new home in the Boston suburbs. The house was an elegant mansion in an old style, with ancient oak trees lining the spacious garden. Elizabeth continued her work at the library, while occasionally accompanying Michael to his social events. Michael was officially appointed as the president of Edwards International and was building his reputation in the business world. However, the center of their life was always their love and respect for each other. "Elizabeth, there was another call from your mother," Michael said at the breakfast table. The morning sun shone through the kitchen window, softly illuminating their faces. Elizabeth took her coffee cup inside, slowly. She had received several apologetic calls and messages from her parents, but she wasn't ready yet. The wounds were too deep. "Maybe it's time to meet them," she said quietly. The next day, Elizabeth decided to meet her parents at a cafe in the suburbs. Martha and George were already seated. Their previously arrogant attitude had subsided and they looked visibly tired. "Elizabeth." Martha stood up as soon as she saw her daughter. "Thank you so much for coming, Mother." Father Elizabeth greeted them quietly. "I'm truly sorry for hurting you." Martha teared up. "We spoiled Vanessa too much. We didn't consider your feelings." George also nodded. "We were wrong. We want your forgiveness." Elizabeth gazed at her parents' faces. Genuine regret could be seen in their eyes. "What about Vanessa?" she asked. "She's having a hard time." Martha sighed. Vanessa and David's engagement was broken off. David's family thoroughly rejected her, and David himself was in a precarious position at the company and was pushing the responsibility onto Vanessa. Vanessa had also quit her job at the upscale boutique and was holed up in her parents' house. With the economic recession, her parents' real estate company was struggling and it wasn't easy to support her. "Vanessa says she wants to apologize," George said quietly. Elizabeth thought for a while and answered, "I need time that night." After discussing it with Michael, she decided, family is family. Someday, the time to forgive might come. A few weeks later, Elizabeth met Vanessa. There was no trace of her once arrogant sister. A dejected young woman stood there. "I'm truly sorry," Vanessa said in a trembling voice. "I was crazy with jealousy. You were always kind and sincere. Yet Elizabeth took a deep breath and suggested, "I may not be able to forgive right away, but we could try to repair our relationship little by little." Vanessa nodded through her tears. Michael continued the contract with David's company, but David himself was transferred to another department. Vanessa began attending a local community college, reassessing her life. On a night when the first snow announcing winter's arrival began to fall by the window, Elizabeth smiled quietly in Michael's arms. A warm fire burned in the fireplace of their new home, and pictures from their wedding adorned the walls. "Any regrets?" Michael asked gently, kissing her hair. Elizabeth shook her head. "Not for a moment. Meeting you gave me the courage to live as my true self." They continued their marriage, built on love and sincerity, quietly but with deep happiness. And Elizabeth realized day by day that there are no wounds that time cannot heal.